A single woman was blamed for a war that lasted 10 years. A city burned to the ground. Heroes became legends. But what if the story you've always heard is only part of the truth? A beautiful queen, a wooden horse, and one of history's greatest battles. Most people know those pieces. But how did one stolen bride turn into a war involving nearly every kingdom in ancient Greece? And why did the mighty city of Troy survive for a decade before falling in a single night? The answers aren't as simple as myth makes them seem. By the end of this story, you'll see why the Trojan War has fascinated people for more than 3,000 years. Picture the mountains of ancient Greece. Kings rule small kingdoms separated by rocky hills and deep blue seas. Every ruler wants power. Every prince dreams of glory. Among them lived Helen, the daughter of Zeus according to Greek mythology. She was said to be the most beautiful woman in the world. Her beauty wasn't just admired, it was dangerous. Dozens of powerful kings and princes traveled across Greece hoping to marry her. Each knew that losing could mean war. Imagine placing the world's most valuable treasure in the middle of a room filled with rival rulers. That's what Helen had become. Helen's father faced an impossible choice. No matter who he picked, the others might attack out of jealousy. But one clever man offered a solution. Odysseus suggested that every man seeking Helen's hand should swear an oath. Whoever Helen married, all the others would defend that marriage if anyone tried to steal her away. At the time, it sounded like a peaceful agreement. It wasn't. That single promise would pull an entire generation into war. Far across the Aegean Sea stood Troy. Picture enormous stone walls rising above rolling plains. Tall towers watched over busy streets filled with merchants, soldiers, and craftsmen. Troy controlled one of the busiest trade routes in the ancient world. Wealth flowed through its gates like water through a river. Inside the city lived Prince Paris. Years earlier, Paris had made a choice that angered two goddesses and pleased another. In the famous Judgment of Paris, he awarded a golden apple to Aphrodite, the goddess of love, after she promised him the most beautiful woman in the world. There was just one problem. That woman was already married. Helen had become the wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta. When Paris visited Sparta as a guest, something happened that would echo through history. Whether Helen willingly left with him or was kidnapped depends on which ancient story you read. Either way, the result was the same. The Queen of Sparta sailed away with the Prince of Troy. That solved one problem for Paris. But it created the biggest war the Greek world had ever seen. Imagine standing on a quiet beach as the sun rises. One ship appears on the horizon. Then another. And another. Soon the sea is covered with sails stretching farther than the eye can see. The oath was called in. Kings from across Greece gathered their armies. Menelaus demanded his wife back. His brother Agamemnon saw a chance to unite the Greeks under one command. Legendary heroes answered the call. There was Achilles, the greatest warrior of his age. Odysseus, famous for his clever mind. Ajax, a giant on the battlefield. Nestor, the wise old king. Together, they launched what later poets described as a fleet of nearly 1,000 ships. Whether that number is exact doesn't matter. The image tells us something important. This wasn't just one kingdom fighting another. It was a coalition unlike anything Greece had seen before. The stage was set. The Greeks expected a quick victory. Instead, Troy refused to fall. Its towering walls stood like a mountain of stone. Attack after attack failed. Supplies continued to enter the city. The defenders held their ground year after year. Think of Troy like a castle surrounded by a moat so wide that attackers couldn't reach the walls without paying a terrible price. The war settled into a long stalemate. During those years, countless battles were fought across the surrounding countryside. Heroes earned glory. Others vanished into history. Here's where the story becomes even more personal. The Trojan War wasn't only about armies. It became a battle between extraordinary individuals. Two men came to represent opposite sides of the war. Achilles fought for the Greeks. Hector defended Troy. Picture Hector standing on the city walls, looking back at his wife and young son before walking toward another battle. He isn't chasing fame. He's protecting his home. Achilles is different. He knows a prophecy. If he fights at Troy, he'll die young, but his name will live forever. One man chooses family. The other chooses immortality through glory. Their paths could only end one way. When Hector killed Achilles' closest friend, Patroclus, grief became rage. Achilles returned to battle like a storm sweeping across the battlefield. Finally, outside the gates of Troy, the two greatest warriors faced each other. Achilles won. The death of Hector broke the spirit of Troy, but even then, the city refused to surrender. At first, that sounds impossible. Without its greatest defender, how could Troy still survive? Because walls can protect a city. But they can't solve every problem. After years of fighting, the Greeks still couldn't capture Troy. So they stopped trying. Or at least, that's what they wanted the Trojans to believe. One morning, the defenders looked across the plain. The Greek camp was empty. The ships appeared to be sailing away. Only one strange object remained. A giant wooden horse. To the Trojans, it looked like a gift left behind after the enemy admitted defeat. But inside the horse, hidden in darkness, waited a group of Greek soldiers. That tiny detail changes everything. That night, while the people of Troy celebrated what they believed was victory, the hidden warriors climbed out. They opened the city gates. The Greek army, which had quietly returned under the cover of darkness, rushed inside. The city that had survived 10 years fell in a single night. Fire spread through homes and temples. Towers collapsed. Thousands fled while others fought until the end. The mighty city of Troy was gone. For centuries, many people believed the Trojan War was nothing more than a myth. Then, in the late 1800s, archaeologists uncovered the ruins of an ancient city in what is now northwestern Turkey. Layer upon layer of buried settlements revealed that several cities had stood on the same site over thousands of years. One layer showed signs of destruction around the same period many historians connect with the traditional date of the Trojan War, roughly the Late Bronze Age, around the 12th or 13th century BC. Does that prove Achilles fought Hector? No. Does it prove a wooden horse existed? Not exactly. The myths grew through centuries of storytelling, mixing real places, real conflicts, and unforgettable legends. History gave us the stage. Myth filled it with heroes. The Trojan War isn't remembered because of who won. It's remembered because every part of the story asks timeless questions. Can beauty become a weapon? Is honor worth dying for? Does cleverness defeat strength? Can one decision change the fate of nations? Those questions still matter today. That's why Homer's epics have survived for nearly 3,000 years. That's why movies, books, games, and documentaries keep returning to Troy. Whether every event happened exactly as the legends describe almost doesn't matter anymore. The real power of the Trojan War is that it sits where history and mythology meet. A place where broken promises started a war, heroes became legends, and one wooden horse became one of the most famous symbols of deception the world has ever known. Subscribe for more stories that uncover the truth behind history's greatest legends.